Well, happy
All right.
Monday, July 20th, everybody. I'm MJ Bolt. I am your host of UnBolted. And with us today, I'm very excited to present Mark Kaplan, the author of Unplugged. Mark, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, MJ. Great to be here.
Yes, and Mark
So,
and
what
I,
are we
we've got a
talking
little bit
about?
of delay. Yeah, we've got a little delay. So Mark and I are going to be trying to finesse this for you all. But thanks for being patient with us as we work through some technical difficulties. We're a little bit late in broadcasting, but we are here live. Mark is there in Connecticut, and I am
Hmm.
here in Spokane, Washington. So across the nation, we are broadcasting today. Mark, I am so excited to share this story of yours and share your research. As many of you know, I've been going through a quite the experience the last few months with my dad, who's 85 years old, and I am
Hmm.
dedicating this broadcast to him. He had quite the situation, bad staph infection. He's had heart issues, but he's been in and out of the hospital the last 4 months, and mainly now with heart issues. And so I've been trying to understand what is at the root of these issues. And Mark, it seems like you've engrossed yourself in understanding this issue for quite a few years now. So Mark, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your story?
Hmm.
And just in case you don't know, again, Unplugged, this is the number one bestseller on Amazon right now, a top new release I saw, and it's fascinating. I haven't gotten very far through it because I just got it on Saturday, but awesome book. Go out and get it. Mark, tell everybody a little bit about how you got to where you are and author of this great book.
Sure. No, thank you, MJ. And my accent's South African, so if you kind of wonder where I come from, I'm from Johannesburg. So I was born in Johannesburg, and at 18, I left the country. I went to the US to play tennis. So we're a tennis family in South Africa. Good weather, and I went on a half scholarship. I went to UC Irvine in Orange County. Had some family there, and I became a very good tennis player. I walked on a team. I ended up top 5 in the country, Division One, and we ended up number 3 as a team. And then I went on the professional tennis circuit. So I played Wimbledon. I did all the Grand Slams. I had some good wins, and I ended up like 117 in the world. And at some point, I decided, look, I want to go back to business school. So I went back to Irvine, did my MBA, and the rest is kind of history. You got married. I met my lovely wife, Melanie. I met her at a wedding. In 2.5 weeks, I proposed to her before she left back to South Africa because she came from South Africa. I thought I'd never see her again. So 27 years later, we married, 3 kids, and live in Connecticut. And I've been in the financial services world for many years. And 6 years ago, I was on the tennis court playing tennis and felt like short of breath, didn't know what was going on. I thought I was the fittest person around. And I was actually at Tokenique Club in Darien, played with a friend. And I wasn't feeling good. I was like, something is going on. So I literally Googled some symptoms. I didn't know really what was happening, and picked up my daughter from soccer and then drove myself to the ER basically. And they said, look, something happened. You had something, we're going to keep you overnight. And long story short, they put a stent in my heart. My main artery was blocked, and they gave me some statins and some drugs and said, it's genetic, and here are your drugs for life, and off you go. And, I didn't know what was going on because actually I don't have much family history, that's the first question. I said, well, I don't really have much family. And my cholesterol was really low. It was like 110, my LDL. So none of it kind of added up. I was just like, I took the packet of drugs and off I went. And I had just terrible side effects. I mean, I started with started with Lipitor. Then they tried me on Crestor. I lost my memory on these drugs. And so I
Wow.
went down this rabbit hole for like almost 8 months. Very difficult time for me, So, I don't know if many people are on statins, but a lot of people do have side effects. And, I was depressed. I was just not the same person my kids saw their father as. And finally, I just decided that it wasn't working for me. I had to actually make a choice, which is a very hard choice when you're speaking to a cardiologist, because he would say, Mark, you're not taking the drugs. I see your LDL's gone back up. It's not like at 40, which is like not really good, which it's a whole nother story. And I said, look, doctor, here are the studies. Here's the Jupiter trial. I started reading. I got my memory back very quickly. And then he just said, look, Mark, we can't work because, you're not taking the drug. And I said, fine. And basically we parted ways, and I made the decision to kind of get into deep research on cholesterol and why I, as an athlete, playing tennis my whole life and pretty fit, had a heart attack. So that was the genesis of my story. And obviously what I want to do when I healed myself and I found out all the research, I connected to many doctors around the world over those 6 years, so Aseem Malhotra, Philip Avadia, Dr. Tim Noakes, Nina Teicholz, David Diamond. I mean, you go through it. I joined all these forums. I went to all these low carb events on metabolic disease. I just spent about, a good 4 years researching, why people are having heart disease, which is this kind of, blockages. And what I found was absolutely shocking. So after I healed myself and all my numbers improved, I lost actually 25 pounds eating meat and eggs and things my doctor said I was going to kill me, which was, another story. And I was actually, it turned to a bit of anger. I was like, why is everyone doesn't know this? Like, why don't people know this? That all my sugars came down. I was insulin resistant, pre-diabetic. I was an athlete, carbo loaded my whole life, Gatorade, pastas, everything I shouldn't have been eating. I had a thyroid dysfunction that was never picked up. I had candida microbiome issues. I had a whole bunch of stuff, right? And once I figured it out, I thought, man, there's no way the average person is going to fire their cardiologist, get off a statin, and do all these things. So I just said, look, I got to pay it forward. I didn't want to, I really, I don't need to do this. So, but I decided that I'm going to build an AI platform and a new medical platform globally. And that was a decision I made like 4 years ago while I was through my journey and healing myself. So I'm like a sales marketing executive in finance. I'm very familiar with marketing. I know Pfizer, I know Eli Lilly, I know the power that they have. So I was probably pharma's worst nightmare, right? You give a guy a drug, an athlete, which I'm driven to like crazy drive, and you kind of give a marketing guy a drug that the worst kind of, absolute risk returns and the way they marketed their drugs. And I had this kind of, I want to heal people. So they drugged the wrong guy. And what I'm doing is I really want to give back. And what Neo is, which Neo is this AI, we're using Anthropic and all the leading AI models, is it's basically going to strip out all the pharma data, which is mostly polluted on selling their drugs, to be able to, you can ask any question, just like you go to GPT or Google and you say, hey, does LDL cause heart disease? What causes heart disease? You won't get the regular pharma, which will say, yeah, LDL, cut your eggs, cut your meat. Our AI is going to be saying, hey, this is what's going on. We track your wearables, your genetics, and this is what you should be doing. So it's really a big goal of ours. We're going to become the world's first root cause health AI in the world. And we're going to have a medical platform that really is around that with doctors, with health professionals. So that's a long version of what's my story. So there's a lot in there we can unpack. And MJ, with your father.
Oh my gosh, so much.
Yeah.
Yeah. So first of all, I was very intrigued, of course, with your story, because like you said, you were a top athlete, and even still at 52 in your professional career, I mean, tennis player, it's, I was a golfer. And so, and not, I taught, but I did not, I didn't play on the circuit, if you will. And so I loved your story because you were tennis and you were a very good golfer. I was a golfer, not very good at tennis, but anyway, I especially appreciate the fitness that you had to be at. And yet you still, had this happen to you at when you're in supposedly great health at 52. And then in your book, you talked about Arthur Ashe, how he was at 36, one of the best all time in tennis. He also had a heart attack at 36. So this kind of, strikes our paradigm of, oh, you've got to get in better shape to be healthier. That's not all there is.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
And that is absolutely correct. And, so this whole paradigm shift for me was, it's not, you think the person that's overweight, that's, not exercising. And there's so many people that we come across in our platforms that are not healthy, but have 0 calcium scores. like are overweight. And I was like depressed. I was like, why is my calcium is pretty high. It's in 1,000, right? And why am I at 52, has a higher calcium? The guy next to me is eating McDonald's fries and sodas and whatever, and he's like got a zero calcium. So for me, it was like really an eye-opener of what really causes heart disease, which is the biggest killer today, right? I mean, more people die of heart disease, being, atherosclerosis, which is, CAD, plaque. Obviously, there's other heart diseases. And I'll tell you why. And I'll just get to the cut, and I'll get to the point of everything, and we can talk about everything. So, when you go to your doctor for 10 minutes, you only have a certain amount of time, right? So, looking at a number, which was LDL, they came up with, and there's a whole story with Ansel Keys and how they, demonize saturated fats, and they came up with this cholesterol theory, right? And that was the beginning of the drug business, which was Lipitor, Crestor, and all the big companies. And that study was rigged, okay? The Ansel Keys study of how he chose these populations in these countries wasn't, he saw this line going up. The more meat you eat, the more heart attacks. And it's been totally debugged by many people. So saturated fat does not cause heart disease, and LDL doesn't cause heart disease. And if you really ask Gemini, like properly, or Google or Grok, and say this, if you say, does LDL cause heart disease, it'll probably come up with, yeah, it does. If you say, what is the root cause of heart disease? Ask Gemini that, you'll see. It'll go, oh, the root cause is not LDL. It's diabetes, inflammation, metabolic, of all those women studies, right? So I'm going, hold on. So to be honest with you, anyone who has heart disease or is on a statin listening to this call, you can look at the Women's Health Study. It's one of the largest studies that was done by women. Men as well also did the study. But you can see the top hazard ratio. The highest hazard ratio is 10 times the risk is diabetes, is type, there it is. So MJ, so you can see this chart, I send out some of my posts on X. Some of it, like, it's jokingly trying to get people to actually, like, this chart should be on every cardiologist's wall in a frame that you say, you know what, and you're taking a statin, just to let you know, cholesterol on the bottom, LDL, has the lowest risk, right? It's almost like 1.4 total cholesterol. So just to let you know what that means. I mean, that is not even association or that is like, that could be anything, okay? So once you go into red, it starts to become more like correlated to risk, right? So you got family history, by the way, in LPA, it's also not that high. So people that have family history and go, man, I'm destined to have heart disease, or I have LPA, which is this kind of, clotting kind of LPL little, cell in your body. This is low risk. So the drug maker said, where do we make money? I can look at a number, LDL, every 10 minutes in a doctor's appointment. I could look at LPA, I can test that, and I could lower it. So there's your drug business. There's your $1 trillion drug business. But guess what the risks are for causing heart disease, which if you ask Google or Gemini what the real risk is, they would give you the top, all the red. They would say it's diabetes, metabolic syndrome, which is really inflammation. So if you're eating a lot of carbohydrates or sugars, your pancreas is releasing insulin all the time. That's pounding your arteries, okay? Smoking, right? So you got kind of toxic kind of things you're putting in your body. Hypertension, which is known, right? The more power or pressure in your arteries is going to break those kind of cracks and to open up the plaque, right? So what we're saying is to heal the red, you don't need a drug, really. I mean, hypertension, yeah, you can take a drug, but to most of those people, most of them are either overweight, not exercising. So the drug companies couldn't sell a drug for the red, but they could sell a drug for the green, okay? And I'll show you all the studies that show you that. So that was my, eye-opener when I fired my cardiologist. And then, so all the people on the call, I think it's very important to look at these studies, on large studies. They've been hidden and buried. And anyway, that's kind of the point, is that get to the root cause, which is I eat meat, eggs, fish. You can be more vegetarian if you want, but I don't do grains. I don't do things that spike my insulin, which is I was drinking so many juices, like orange juice and smoothies and, oatmeal and bananas. But if you put a CGM on your arm, which is, you can get a cheap CGM glucose monitor, through anywhere online, you can see your spiking of glucose. And if you're genetically predisposed to sugar, which is not good, like you have these genes with some people, Your sugars can go up to 180, 190. But when you walk into your doctor's office like 4 weeks later, it'll say my fasting glucose is 85, 90. And you go, I'm fine. I'm good. But you don't realize that every day or every hour you're spiking your glucose, you need to track fasting insulin. So just remember, there's one thing on the call today, what you want to track is fasting insulin. And this is a great one as well, because, and this is why in my next book, MJ, it's going to be around genetics, which I'm going to be launching in December. I believe that you can actually cure atherosclerosis, CAD. You can cure type 2 diabetes. People are doing it anyway. Alzheimer's, cancer, even because cancer feeds on sugar. But we believe that if you do your genetics, which you'll be able to do through Neo, and you have all your data, some people will eat a banana and you put a CGM on them and you'll see their glucose rise. I mean, some of them will rise to like 168, you'll see. And some people will rise to 118. The issue that we have around the world in curing heart disease is no one has all the data. They haven't put the genetics, they haven't put the blood work, and there's no doctor that's looking at it all, right, and saying, look, banana's fine, but you over there, that person, you're not eating granola, bananas, honey at all, because you're going to have heart disease. So in my mind, you can cure these diseases, but you got to have the data, you got to have the genetics, you got to have all these items. So all these studies that you'll see and that I show gets to the root cause, but it's very difficult to give one program for everyone, right? So some people can handle the sugar. I mean, you look at Warren Buffett, he's been living off, Coke and, and he's managing his calories, which is smart. He's saying, I need 2,200 calories. They may come from a Coca-Cola, they may come from a Big Mac, but he's 95. And you're going, well, hold on, how's he 95? Well, let me tell you, I'd love to get his genetics. I'd love to see what genetics he has because, he's not predisposed maybe to high insulin. So he has insulin.
Did I lose you, Mark? Or is that on my end?
It's probably on your end a bit.
Okay. So you're talking about the Warren Buffett. I heard that part and the insulin.
Yeah. I lost you there. Okay. So because I got one of your charts there. So what I was saying is that some people can handle the sugar, okay? And they just do not have a sharp rise because their insulin is working. I'm good on my end. I think I'm losing you there, MJ. Are you okay?
I am, but I might not be able to show those charts for some reason. I think
Hello?
my system is struggling. So
I think I've
keep,
lost you
keep
there.
talking
Lost
about
the sound
that.
a bit.
Oh, I can hear you just fine, Mark.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Can you hear me? Okay,
Yep.
I can't hear you, but you can hear me. Okay, so what I was saying about Warren Buffett is that he may have a genetic part that does not go up, right? The glucose doesn't rise because his pancreas is.
I apologize, everybody. I don't know what's going on there.
I don't know. I lost you there. My internet is actually fine, but I can't hear you, MJ.
You can't hear me at all?
For some reason, I cannot hear you.
Darn it. Okay. Well, let's keep going, Mark. Just go ahead and keep talking, and hopefully it will work itself out.
For some reason, I may have to come back in.
Okay. Why don't you do that? We apologize for our technical difficulties, everybody. And I admit I'm a little rusty. It's been quite a few months since I've been back on here, since I've been helping my dad out and trying to get him healthy and out of the hospital. So anyway, Mark is going to probably go back out and come back in, hopefully, and we'll be able to continue this. There we go. And hold on just a second.
I'm back.
Let's
Yeah.
get you back. Okay, let me remove that one. All right. Can you hear me better, Mark?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
All
I told
right.
everybody we're going to keep going as long as we can, and if we can't, we'll redo it. But
Yeah.
the
Okay.
information has been fascinating, and thank you
Mm.
everybody for hanging in there while we kind of have these technical difficulties and glitches. But yeah, so I think this is a fascinating thing and something, as I am trying to figure this out and learn about it, not just for my dad, but also for myself. I have
Mhm.
one of these CGMs on right now, Mark,
Oh, wow.
right there,
Okay. Well
and
done.
they're a continuous glucose monitor. And I have to
Hmm.
tell you a little bit my story. This started. I did a panel. I have been questioning the mainstream narrative for 24 years. My
Hmm.
son was vaccine injured when he was 18 months. He stopped talking for 2 years, and so that's a little bit of my history.
Hmm.
And so I've been kind of questioning stuff, food, trying to figure this out, this whole wheat thing. My dad's a farmer. Why is everybody having such hard issues with wheat and not digesting it? And anyway, so I did a bunch of tests, a blood test. I'm not I don't like to go to the doctor because I don't necessarily oh, somebody said I was fired for not taking the shot. Yeah. Sorry about that. Devin and Derek on here. Thank you for sharing. And yeah, and so I did a whole bunch of blood tests. And what I did is I used AI, and probably not, I know I'm not as savvy as you, Mark, but I did like times, I did like 14 vials of blood work. I went through this membership thing, so I didn't necessarily have to work through my doctor. And anyway, it came out with all this buttload of information that I didn't know what to do with, right? All these test results. So I fed it into AI. I used Grok, and I realized there's a predisposition, if you will, for these AI. So you can't necessarily just say, hey, not like your AI, Mark, and I want you to go more in detail in that here in a little bit. But I
Hmm.
plugged all my test results in there and I said, okay, read these test results, prioritize these, help me understand what are the top issues, and tell me what I should do about it. And so it did. And I actually was right there at that pre-diabetes level. I've never been there before, even though I've struggled with my weight for a long time. Nobody has ever said boo to me about that, except
Hmm.
for the weight, but nothing about my blood sugar, nothing about insulin. And because of being on X and following other people, I was like, I need to probably watch this blood sugar thing, and heard about the continuous glucose meters. And these things are amazing. They're not 100% foolproof. They're, a bit glitchy, but I just got one on my son. And my son that was vaccine injured, he's 29 right now. And we just both put him back on, started this weekend. And he's been at like almost 200 the whole weekend.
Hmm.
And
Wow.
nobody else has said boo to him.
Hmm.
And yet, obviously, there are major issues. And the way I'm taking, when I'm reading your stuff, Mark, is that it's almost like a death by a thousand cuts. Every time, like you were talking about the fasting insulin. So when you go in and they test your, fasting insulin, that's a snapshot in the morning when you haven't eaten anything for, 8, 12 hours. So like the damage has been done, right?
Hmm.
Your
Yep.
glucose has spiked and the damage is done. And maybe, now it's settled back down and it's not very high, or it might be a little bit high, but nobody's like going,
Hmm.
warning, warning,
Yep.
they just kind of gloss over it, right?
Yep. No, exactly. So 90. But so the way it all works is that your pancreas releases insulin, right? Every time you have sugar or you ingest sugar. And then if you do that for 25 years, like I was an athlete and I was eating, Gatorade, or I'm doing that every hour, you can imagine, right? So my sugars go up, my insulin releases, it brings the sugar down. My sugar goes up, and you're just doing that continuously, right? And I did a genetic test where they looked at my arteries and the genes, and they said, look, Mark, you're predisposed to vascular damage. You got very sensitive like glycocalyx, And if you're pounding your arteries with insulin and sugar, you're going to be having issues, right? And the genetic test pointed that out. I mean, it just, all it was a saliva test. You put in a bottle, you send to it. And just from that saliva test, no history about me at all. It pointed out exactly the things I shouldn't have been eating, right? So this is the power of, and also, MJ, I think people, this whole kind of Ozempic, weight loss and how to lose weight. I'll just give you a summary. And by the way, I've had people lose weight very easy. Now I know there's a sugar addiction piece to it, and it's how do we manage that. But I'm just saying, if you want to lose weight, it's actually not hard on like how to do it. So like for my wife lost like 30, 40, almost 40 pounds in about 4 months. And they didn't do it by starving themselves, right? So you have tanks in your body. You got a fat tank and you got a glucose tank, right? Now I'm using the word, you got protein, fat, and carbs as the three major kind of nutrients in food, right? You can live off protein and fat and you will be fine living as a Homo sapien. You don't need carbohydrates, just to let you know. You do not need carbohydrates to live at all, okay? If you had only carbohydrates and no fat and protein, you're not going to live. You'll be dead, okay? So the way it works, and I lost 30 pounds, not because I want to lose weight. I just started eating like a hunter-gatherer, like I ate like an ancestral diet, like what I should be eating, right? So I'm from Africa. And, there's, you watch some of these movies like Naked and Afraid where these people like 30, I think it's 21 days in the bush, like they're out there and they're trying to survive. Like in 1 week, you see the people that are tapping out, they've had no protein. They're eating like leaves and they're done. They basically tap out. And the people that make it find some source of protein, right? Some animal they hunted or some rat or some snake, and they make it through, right? So this whole idea that meat and this eggs is bad for you was like the last 60 years. So let's look at 3 million years, right? So just think of all that brainwashing that's gone through, right? With pharma, drugs, and the food. So to lose weight is very easy. If you don't work out much and you're having a lot of carbohydrates, you know what happens? It just turns to fat. Okay, so everything around your waist, it will go straight to fat. Okay? If you want to lose weight, I would eat meat, eggs, fish, low-carb vegetables, no juices, black coffee, water, and do walking. If you just walked and ate that way, no breads, no grains, no carbohydrate, with that glucose meter, just keep it like level, like 120, not more than 120. What's going to happen in your body is it takes 2.5 weeks to train your body to burn fat. So think about this. If you have some sugar orange juice, that goes straight to your glucose tank, and you start to burn glucose first. It'll always burn glucose first because it's quickest to burn, right? If you give it no glucose, guess what happens? Your body takes 2.5 weeks and it starts to burn fat. Fat burning is the best way. It's the most efficient way. Even the leading athletes today in Ironman are going more fat burning. Good fats, butter, avocado, salmon, meat, fatty meat, not filet, fatty meat. So what happens is to lose weight really fast, don't do any carbs, deplete your glucose tank, and every day you'll start to burn fat. Guess what happens? It starts to burn all the fat around you. You start to lose weight. My cousin, he lost 35 pounds, my wife. So this whole Ozempic story, yes, people, they say it's a disease, not a disease. I don't see this disease in Ethiopia. There's no obesity disease in Ethiopia. I'm an African, so there's none of that, right? Now, yeah, do we like snack all day? Do we eat all these like sugary things? Yeah, Americans and people are eating a lot of sugar, right? So eat nuts, have meat, eggs. You'll reduce inflammation because your insulin won't be spiking. You'll lose weight. You'll have amazing energy. And I don't like to use labels like ketogenic and, that's all like tribal names. Like eat an ancestral diet. Eat like we as humans ate. If you live by the sea, you'd have fish. If you lived inland in Africa, you'd be hunting. Maybe you'd find some vegetables in season if you found them, right? And so that's the confusion with people living in a sea of poison. Like you go through an airport, you're in literally a forest of poison. And the hard thing is that culturally, like if you're in Mexico, you're eating corn, you're having rice, you're having tortillas. The problem with modern food today is that it's genetically modified, it's pesticide sprayed, right? I mean, a lot of fructose, right? So a ton of fructose, sodas. So we're not eating how these cultures used to eat, right? And they don't want to be eating, like other food. They want to be eating like their culture. Like in India, they want to be having their local food. So seed oils is another huge issue, right? Those are one of the worst. I mean, I had a ton of them through airline food, and it's laced into everything, right? It oxidizes your cholesterol, which is your good cholesterol, and it causes issues. So long story short is the food supply and what you're putting in your body is number one. I'd rank that like 80% of it. You don't need to work out like an Ironman, okay? You don't need to do that. If you just walked every day, got some sun, and only put pure food into your body, okay? Sardines, great. Go get a can of sardines, have some mincemeat, make some broccoli. If you just did that and had water and black coffee and cream and butter and all the things they told you not to eat, all the nice fatty foods, which will really satiate you and keep you full, yes. That's the key. Otherwise, you're hungry every hour. If you had a granola, you're hungry an hour because your sugar went up, you're hungry again. You're just going like this all day. So you're snacking like 10 times. If you had a huge steak, that's a big ribeye steak, do you think you're going to be hungry in an hour? Like you want to eat again? You're not, okay? So humans hunted, right, in Africa. You went for a run, took you about a whole day to pull down the animal, right? You had a huge meal, and then you know what? You woke up in the morning, you're like, okay, let's go for a run or a walk, and let me find me another animal, But now we got a pantry, and we got a fridge full of everything, right? And we're snacking on high sugar diets, and you're hungry every hour. So this whole thing, I got to have 7 meals a day to keep my sugar up, it's all marketing BS. It's basically, yep. So you have to unwash all this brainwash of media ads of these, granola ads and Cheerios and, LeBron James, eating this thing and Serena Williams taking her Ozempic injection. I mean, you got to understand, like we are brainwashed to such an extent. But you look at the last, million years of evolution, it's only 60 years or 70 years we've come up with this idea to sell more drugs. And, we're the most unhealthy population in the world, America. So anyway, that's my story. I'm going forever. There's so many topics here. But I think for people to heal, just eat pure food and go for a walk, be in the sun. Community is important. Social aspects important. So this is a great one here. This is one I did, one of my posts, I was eating the left breakfast, by the way, my whole life as an athlete because I carbo loaded. I had my granola, my oatmeal, oatmeal, Kellogg's K, oatmeal, wonderful, fiber, banana, honey. Well, let me tell you, I mean, I don't know if you've got your CGM, if you ate this thing on the left. Well, I don't want to hurt your body, but I promise you that CGM is going to go up pretty high, okay? Now, meat, eggs, avocado, tomatoes, that was like demified, right? So you put your CGM on, you want to keep your insulin and glucose very level. That's what you're doing on the right side. So we have been brainwashed that the left part is good because meat and eggs and bacon are going to kill you. And this is, the heart attack breakfast because it's pretty much what I ate. And I'm not saying it's bad. This is the one problem is that if you have the right genetics, you could eat the left side. And remember I told you earlier, your sugar may not go high. But let me tell you, if you don't know that,
yeah,
and you do that every day, you see all the ones that have heart attacks and they go, you know what? It's family history. It's not family history. It's those families that are eating this way and they're triggering the disease. Those families can't eat the red area. They got to eat the green. Yeah. And this is how you solve heart disease. This is how you cure it. And no one knows that except AI once you put your genetics in.
And for some reason, if you can't see what this picture is a picture of oatmeal, and heart healthy, you've got these labels on here. And so people believe in your book, you talked about how your mom, she thought she was doing everything right for you. And we've had, a generation or two now of this is supposedly heart healthy, but it's not, it's spiking our insulin. Oatmeal, I think, is such an interesting one because almost everybody thinks this is good for you. And it's got this, misnomer. And like you said, eggs, meat, fat, good fats, fatty meat, bacon, they've been demonized in our society. And yet those are the things that can actually heal Your
Mhm.
heart can
Yeah.
heal your body. And it's because of this inflammation. That was one of the things that my test showed, is that I was very high in inflammation.
Mm.
And, I think there's so many things. Inflammation, I think, is at the root of autoimmune disorders, psoriatic arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis. I can't remember if it was you, Mark, that said, this insulin and the blood sugar spikes that we're having, you can trace the root of almost every disease, thyroid,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you know, uh, diverticulitis is a very common one right now. What's at the
Yep.
root of that? Is it this? Is it blood sugar spiking? It makes you wonder.
Yeah, I know. Look, I mean, there's, and look, we're launching, by the way, Neo, which is the AR, and we got 500 beta users. We got 5,000 people on the wait list, like in the last few months. So we're launching
Oh,
500 more beta. Can you hear me? Yeah.
yep, I'm one of your waiters.
Oh, you are. So listen, so MJ, great news. Probably tomorrow we're opening up 500 new users. So I'm going to post it on X. The first 500 will come in, and then you can start testing the next version. So you'll come in and put your blood work in, and we're still testing. So in the AR, you can ask it anything. If you've got all these diseases you mentioned or issues, you can say, look, I have this issue. Here's my blood work. Here's my genetics. And then, by the way, genetics will be coming a little bit later, but that's a lot more data. But yeah, you could ask it the root cause. So in my mind, the way I look at this is that, I mean, for me, because I went through this journey, I mean, heart disease is a 12-headed dragon. I use that because it's not one thing, right? And you can look at all these people. You go, well, this person is super healthy, but they still have heart disease. And we have thousands of people in our groups. When they put in our data, they put all their data in. What we found is that some of the leading indicators are the following. So I mentioned sugar, insulin resistance is a big one. Diabetes, saw the women's study 10 times, right? Gut, microbiome and gut is a big one. Okay, now that's like a black hole because I had candida, by the way. So I had and I had a lot of antibiotics as a child, had like bronchitis, ton of antibiotics, erythromycin, they gave me as a kid. I wiped out my good bacteria, and I know what happened, right? So by 2008, I started getting all these candida symptoms, which was just like, whatever, sweating and all these like weird things. So I went to a naturopath. I healed my candida, which was really hardcore. I went like caveman diet, just like meat, nothing to feed the flora, right? The bad bacteria. Starved. It took a whole bunch of like antimicrobial and like wiped everything out. So I did the whole thing. So microbiome is a big one, okay? And so you got insulin resistance, which is a big driver of a lot of diseases. You have the microbiome, okay, which is kind of connected as almost like your second brain of your body. And then you basically got autoimmune. So autoimmune disease is a big one. Okay, so I see it almost as three pillars of health. You got metabolic, you got microbiome, and you got kind of autoimmune. Autoimmune is like you have people, on vegetarian diets, they suffer terribly. I mean, the oxalates, the lectins, I mean, they cannot even eat their way, and their autoimmune just picks up. And it's a massive issue around the world, autoimmune disease. Now, the way a lot of people get rid of it, they use these elimination diets, which is you just go hardcore. You go hardcore carnivore, which is basically lets me just go meat, because meat actually, it inflames you the least. It actually does. There's no kind of spraying of pesticides. There's no lectins, so you start with meat and a real, like called the lion diet, which is really all meat. And then you start to add back one food group at a time, right? It's the only way you're going to find out like what your symptoms are. So you do that for like maybe 3 months. There's a whole program you could look at Neo as you start putting that in. But that's what I'm saying. So all those diseases you mentioned, there's a root of it, right? And Neo, what it'll do, it'll look through the lens of this amazing frontier AR, not at the pharma drugs, but what is the root of these issues? Like you said, autoimmune could be some colon issues. It could be, colitis or tons of these diseases. So you start to peel back the layers, but I feel the root is those three.
Yeah.
We say on our Neo, we have like the 7 pillars of health, which you can go through. But Neo is looking at all of that with your genes, with your blood work, and just ask it questions. So
Yeah.
simplify it, eat pure food, whole food, a lot of water, community. Stress is a big one. Okay. So there's a lot of studies done on stress. Okay. There's Some great research was done in Eastern Europe, on miners, young miners, right? And, they were saying, well, they were mining, and it was bad, air, but these young miners died, and they opened up their arteries and hearts. And, the stress of that, you can see they had calcified arteries at a young age, right? So stress is a driver. Now, we all have stress in our days, right? It's what do we do to kind of release it and do it? So we got to manage that. So in my mind, food, 70%, walking, sunlight, 10, 15, sleep, stress, and community. Those are the pillars, right? But if you want to start really fast, clean your diet, and then sleep, exercise, community, keep your stress down. And then you got to figure out, if you got candida, you're going to have to do, but listen, if you're on like a one of these diets or not diets, the way you eat, you just go more hard carnivore, just go more elimination. So you starve the bacteria or the stuff in your guts, and that should help you. I mean, get rid of symptoms, right? And then you start to go. So it's not complicated. It's actually pretty simple. But people, go, man, I'm not eating meat. I'm going to die of a heart attack, or, I'm not doing that. So.
Well, the thing about beef and meat, to me, that, and again, following some people on X and learning. And by the way, Mark, tell people where to find you, because I want to make sure that they're plugging in. You have great information, great graphics. We're trying to show a few of those today on your X account. So share with everybody where they can find you.
I'm at Mark Kaplan 20. So at Mark Kaplan 20. That's my handle on X. And I'm posting a lot of stuff. All our doctors are there. Philip Avadia, Seema Hotra, Noakes, they're all tagged there. So all of what I'm saying is through research, science. It's not just me coming up with this stuff. I'm standing on the shoulders of giants in the industry that left the industry because they knew that they weren't healing people, and they decided they couldn't live that way. Like Philip Avadia, amazing story, amazing surgeon. I met him, 5 years ago at Facebook. I literally messaged him and said, Philip, you got to help me. You got to save me. And he replied back to me. And his book, Stay Off My Operating Table. So there's amazing legends and people like Nina Teicholz, amazing person, The Big Fat Surprise, reading about all these studies. So that's where you can find me. We have a website called healthtruth.ai, which is really the science foundation of the company, healthtruth.ai. And there you'll see all the studies, MJ. So all the studies you're showing, you'll see all the studies that we post. And then, so think of Health Truth as kind of the Anthropic, if people follow AI, and think of Neo as Claude. So Neo is the product. That's the AI we're launching now, which you're on the beta. You're going to be on the beta soon. And then think of Health Truth as the science, the foundation, all the amazing PhDs. And so I'm really, look, my goal, I have, as I said, I'm probably farmer's worst nightmare because I'm not doing this for the money. I am doing this for the truth of getting the truth out with AI. Like Google search was supposed to be really great, but guess what? The first 10 searches you get are all sponsored by pharma. You got to go way down the bottom. So I want to change all of that. I want to be, the first thing is your blood work is telling you what you should be doing, So we want to give back. We want to be able to help all the people who are following you here. You can put your blood work in. So healthtruth.ai, there's a link to Neo. I'll send out a link tomorrow, probably tomorrow, for the first 500 people. You can all come in. And then we'll probably launch in about 4 weeks, the full platform, which will be live. Okay, it'll be different membership levels, wearables. It'll have, unbelievable resources of, you can take your existing blood work, take a picture, don't need to pay for it. There's a free model where everything's free. You can use it, get insights. You can join communities, like groups, like Facebook groups will be there. And you get everything that you need that I never had when I had my heart attack. So when I had my heart attack, It was a dark place. You read my book, it was not good. It was like no one is there to save me. I was on my own. I had to read books, find these doctors. And now, if I had what I see now at Neo, I'd go on there, I have a heart attack. What do? You'll have everything there. And that's really what I wanted to build. And that was my legacy, really, in my life, to give back. And so, MJ, it's so good to try and spread the word,
Yeah. Yeah, and I want you to go a little bit more into Neo because I
Hmm.
think this is really important. We do have some questions and I want to get to those. But
Yeah.
first, let's talk just I want to do those two things, but let me just share with people. Dr. Philip Avadia, am I saying his name right?
Vadia.
He did
Yeah.
the foreword of your book, and I don't remember if I found him first or you, but I did order
Mm.
his book, Stay Off My Operating Table, and it is
Yes.
being released, I believe, the 29th, but you can pre-order that one. He's a partner of yours, is that right? I
He's a
understand.
he's a,
And
he's a co-founder. He's a co-founder of the company. He's coming up with a book called "Stay Off My Kitchen Table." His
okay,
"Stay Off My
okay,
Operating Table" was these. Yeah, that's a great book. That's his first book. Yeah,
that's the one I pre-ordered. Yes.
yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I'm interested. I actually just was texting a person to try to get good food for my dad. Since
Mm.
I'm 6 hours away from him, I'm trying to find somebody to cook some good meals for him,
Yeah.
because it's such a different way of thinking. So I did pre-order his book, because I want to find those good recipes. But the thing about meat that I wanted to share with people is that, the research is showing that, because you have these four stomachs in cows, that it may even get rid of the glyphosate, is some of the research that's coming out. So even if, cows are eating something that might be sprayed, they have this amazing system that purifies this into
Mm-hmm.
this amazing goodness called
Yeah.
beef. That has
Yeah.
all the so many nutrients. You're talking about liver the other day, and I'm like, Mark, do you really eat liver?
Not much.
But
Like
it's
chicken
got
liver.
all these nutrients in it that most food don't have. These are the superfoods that have been
Yeah.
demonized,
Mhm.
by our mainstream narratives, unfortunately. And we've got to go back to doing that. But I want to read real quick some things. Dr. Philip Ovadia did your foreword of your book, so that's saying a lot. And then you had Dr. Asim Malhotra, who's a redeemed cardiologist, across the world, right? UK,
Yep.
US. He said Mark Kaplan's story is a story of millions of patients failed by a system that medicates numbers instead of treating root causes. This book is the patient's voice the medical establishment needs to hear. Every person on a statin should read it. So those are very high praises from
Yeah. And
some
they're
very
my
esteemed
co-founders
people.
as well. They're my co-founders, and I got a few others like Nina Tarkoltz wrote a forward and Rob Cywers, surgeon. So these people, are amazing because, what I'm trying to do is a big initiative. I mean, and, all these people are amazing warriors. I call them warriors because they left the industry. They were fighting, this fight and it's hard, that was your living, right? Being a cardiologist. And all of a sudden you're saying, it was a lie, right? I mean, Ken Berry, a lot of these people left their industry to actually tell the truth. So these people saved me. Correct. They're actually co-founders of the company. So what
That's
I'm speaking from is really the knowledge that they've built, and we're using it in Neo. So you have access to that root cause. So
Yeah. So tell people about Neo. Why is this important?
yeah.
Why can't I just even go even to Grok and just plug my dad's one of the things that I'm somewhat savvy. So every day when he's in the hospital, you get, all the blood tests, which is handy. It's not great when he's in the hospital because, there's other things that are happening. But at least I get these blood tests and I get them on, he shared his my chart with me, and so I can download them and I plug them into Grok every morning when was in the hospital. That's what I would do. And I would help it kind of analyze it and help me understand what's happening, what's good,
Mm.
what's not good. The problem is what, Mark, when I'm plugging it
Yeah.
into a Grok.
Yeah, look, I mean, and you should really try this out. Like I gave you a good example earlier. What Neo is going to be doing and the way we program it, it's using amazing models. It's using Google. It's using Anthropic's models. It's using actually the best frontier models. But the issue is that if you go, and you should try this, just put into your normal AI, whatever you have, GPT. Like I said earlier, does LDL cholesterol cause heart disease? I wish you can do it right now live, MJ, if you want to do it on the screen. But you'll see the answer. And the answers, the way AI works is it's trained on all the available data out there, right? And guess who has most of the data about LDL? Well, it was pharmaceutical companies, right? They have published so much information on LDL cholesterol, that all the AI is doing, it's looking like kind of, in the way AI works, and I'm not going into detail here, but it's going to look at numbers, like what's the most studies, where's all information, and take like a consensus view, okay? What Neo is going to be doing, it's going to start off with the root cause of all the studies, that it's looking through a metabolic lens of what's the root cause, like the woman study, like the study on the Jupiter trial. The Jupiter trial was an amazing study done by a pharmaceutical company. It backfired on them because they did a study of people on statins, and there were people that had a lot of inflammation, like high HSCRP, which was an inflammation kind of, marker, right? And they said, look, if you take the statin on these people with high inflammation, like what happens to their heart attacks, right? So what they found out that with the people that have high inflammation, it was really the inflammation that was driving the heart disease, because when they cut the inflammation down, the heart disease reduced. So look up the Jupiter trial. That was a trial that my cardiologist went ballistic. He said basically, Mark, we can't work together anymore. But that was a famous trial that pharma proved that inflammation was the main driver of heart disease versus cholesterol, okay? So going back to the AI with Neo will have all these articles and all the science, and we've said, look, don't look at the pharmaceutical kind of absolute or relative risk reduction, which is another, just when anyone's reading a study or you look at a drug, when they say, man, this has a 30% reduction of heart disease, they don't mention something. It's called relative risk reduction, okay? Now, that's just a kind of a sleight of hand in statistics. So basically, if there's 100 people that are taking a statin, or 100 people out there, and you have one person, and let's say one person benefits out of 100, or 1.2. If one person never benefited and 1.2 benefit, that's 20%. 1 to 1.2 is 0.2. They look at 0.2 as 20%. So 1 out of 100 to 1.2 out of 100, they go, wow, 20% of the people had a benefit. But guess what happened to 98.8? If you're using the math in your head right now, they have no benefit, like zero benefit for taking a statin for primary risk reduction, which means someone never had a heart attack, which is, hey, your cholesterol's high, take a statin. 98 people, 0.8 out of 100, have no benefit for that statin. Think about that. So I'm in insurance, I'm investment. Imagine I launched a product that had a 98.8 failure rate. Do you really think you would take that statin if there was a tin that said 98.8 don't make any benefit of the statin? They wouldn't sell a statin. You would never sell the statin. The FDA approved the ability to use relative risk reduction. So that's the biggest con in the history of medicine of how they use that. So all I'm saying to you is that we'll have all the studies. We'll show you what the root cause is. You'll ask Neo. Neo will get to the root cause of your issue with your data, and it won't have that issue of does LDL cause heart disease. It'll say, no, it's inflammation, the woman's hazard ratio, the Jupiter trial will pop out. Everything will pop out that's been hidden for decades, okay? So the AI is going to be used to our advantage, which is finding all the truth out there. That's why we call it Health Truth AI. And it's going to give it to you through your lens of your data. Think about that, right? So it's like you going to a doctor, the smartest doctor on the planet, right? And he's going to find all the truth out there without the lies of selling you drugs to find out what you really N of one need for your body, what your genetics is, what you should be doing with studies. So that's what Neo is. It's kind of the future. It's going to be called, it's the world's first root cause health AI, okay, in the world. Because very few companies would do what I'm doing, because you'd have to, like Function Medicine, all these big companies are doing great things. You'd have to go after pharma, or you'd have to go after the narrative. And pharma's interests are so embedded everywhere, it's almost like company suicide to do that. Now, I decided to build a new ecosystem, a new healthcare system, because I'm in the insurance world. That's another nightmare for pharma for me, because I'm from the insurance world. I'm like the worst nightmare for them, because I deal with reinsurers, and all the reinsurers like RGA, Swiss Re, they don't want heart attacks because they're reinsuring all the insurance companies. And I've spoken to them, they're like, Mark, your Health Truth score, which you come up with a Health Truth score, it's called a credit score for your health, like FICO credit score. It's out of 1,000. We know that if you can improve all your markers and your score is like 980, you have low risk. Like your CGM is flat. all your numbers are great. Your insurance should not be $3,000 a month if you're doing self-insured. It shouldn't be. We can
Wow.
price your insurance at $500 or $1,000. So the same way Tesla, when you drive their car and they issue insurance because they know how you drive, we're going to issue Neo insurance. So my long game, I'll give you the long game. The long game for me is we're going to have Neo, a global health platform where they are. It's going to have doctors all over the world. From medical school, they'll be coming in, and we're going to offer insurance, health insurance. But we're going to offer it because we know how the person is eating, how they are, and we can lower insurance costs. We can go to self-funded employers, give them Neo. They'd be more encouraged to lower their insurance costs if you're self-funded employer. That's the end game, because insurance companies, drug companies, Cigna, United Healthcare, they control the whole system. Once you build a new insurance company, and once you know how people are driving, we can sell life insurance cheaper, we can sell health insurance cheaper, the whole model changes. So for me, I saw the whole mechanism of the business side. I saw the way it was captured with everyone. And I realized that data is the king. If you can heal people and you have the data, you can actually build this insurance platform. And the reinsurers want it. They all want it. It's the insurance companies and the doctors that don't. I mean, look, the doctors are actually good people. It's the drug companies and the private equity firms that own the medical doctors. They don't want it. They want their profits every quarter. So yeah, it ain't changing.
Didn't you, I think you had a post just this weekend about how your doctors are incentivized not on the outcomes of your health, but on how many prescriptions they write, correct?
Correct. They have like a bonus system, and you can see it, so it's public. I mean, the way they, so they get dinged every time, like let's say your cholesterol's high and they don't actually give you a statin or recommend it. They have a performance report that actually dings them. Like they got 100 patients, and you never told them. And so it's terrible. I mean, and look, they got a lot of debt. They come out of medical school. They go into Northwell Health. They go into Mount Sinai. This is the algorithm, right? This is how they go to practice. And it's tough. It's really, and that's why the doctors that left, I have a lot of respect for them. And we want to build this medical platform for these doctors that all Neo's data is. By the way, we're launching NeoDoc as well, neodoc.health. That's coming later in the year. That's for all the doctors around the world. So we're building a NeoDoc platform for doctors to plug in with Neo Wellness, which is all their data. So we're literally building a alternative Cleveland Clinic, Mount Sinai. It'll be one of the biggest health platforms in the world, but it's going to be all root cause based and all getting people healthy. And healthier people means lower insurance, means more productive at work. People will not have more sick days off. Like companies would want people to be on this. So our long game is your neighbor is skinny, healthy, and he's 90 years old. The other neighbors go, which doctor are you using? No, we're using a Neo doctor, telling me to do all the stuff. So we know the late majority is the hardest to get after, the average person who just doesn't know. But we'll start off with the early adopters. We'll start off with the early majority. And then by the time the system, so I'm very hopeful. I know we're up against a lot of people that, media, but, this is how revolutions start, right? They basically start this way. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that. Let's get back to, and I love, this is so important, Mark, because you're talking about the drivers of the whole industry and the whole sector. And so I love that you're taking, that big scope approach, because you have to, in order to really change the system. And I also want to help people now too, and figure out what can they do right here now, and so we've got some questions here. So I've got, here is one of them. This is from Gil Garrettson, it looks like, on YouTube. He says, question for Mark. Our family has history of low HDL. But my triglycerides are 113. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, that was actually me right there. So when I had my heart event, I'll show you my blood test. My HDL was also about 40, 45. And my triglycerides were about that, exactly. So this is, I don't know what Gil's eating, but it's amazing. Once I switched from, and I eat like 6, 7, 8 eggs a day, pasture raised, I eat a ton of them. Once I moved my diet to this kind of more meat, eggs, fish, and I was exercising anyway, that didn't really change. My HDL started going up. My HDL today is like 78. So there is a genetic form of low HDL where some people have that low HDL. I don't know if, that's why if you need to do a genetic test to see if you actually have that. But I was low just because of I was eating the wrong foods, right? So that's one part of it. Triglycerides, that's mostly driven by carbohydrates. Some people are predisposed to high triglycerides. You see, MJ, that's why genetics is such a component in the NEO, because like if I look at those numbers, I go, wow, is that just like I can make a change and change my food and it works? I don't know what they're eating. I don't know what their genetics are, but I would say go meat, eggs, fish, more protein, no bread, no sugars like carbohydrates are going to spark your glucose. Your trigs should come down. Mine are at like 45, 50. So that ratio, what he's mentioning, is an important ratio. It's the HDL to trigs, right? You want that kind of level, 1-to-1. Maybe it's like 65, 70, Once you're 40, and I was like that, you're basically 40 into 113, you're like almost at like 3. That's kind of a risk. Now, so I would do the change of the diet, exercise. HDL is a lot of exercise. You do like heavy lifting or a bit of weights, it's good for HDL. So those are some things you can do and see, and you can track these every month. Those numbers change pretty quickly. Triglycerides are like every 4 weeks, so you can see a change. But I would do a genetic test, like a DNA. It's called the DNA Company, DNAcompany.com. We're going to offer just do a simple genetic test. It'll go after these markers, and but the core is the food and the exercise for that one.
Yeah, and this Gil actually did say, I appreciate the book's suggestions. He just said he just got his APOE and
APOE.
N21 genotype type kit today.
Yep.
So it sounds like, and I do understand that a little bit from the research that I had done, a little bit of research I had done for my son. There are predispositions, but it also your environment, what you eat, what you're exposed to, toxins, they affect that. So it helps you understand you might be more predisposed. What's the word?
Predisposed. Yeah.
Predisposed to having maybe higher cholesterol or higher glucose reactions, to certain types of food. That's why it's important to check, right? And also, I would say, just from experience, I would love to eat 3 eggs or 6 eggs. My body can't handle it yet because my digestive system has been, hampered from a lifestyle of not taking care of this. So by, getting these monitoring things like the CGM, the continuous glucose monitor, you can kind of see, because sometimes I don't know if it's my glucose is spiking, but I've heard that if you do too much protein, even though it's super good for you, for your body, it can actually, cause a spike. So having these right monitoring things are helpful. Mark, talk also about, I want your response to that, but I also want to ask you about what are the things that people should be looking at? Because right now, if they go and say, hey, doc, I want to check into this, and, they may not get the tests for the test results that they need to be looking at. So what are the ideal things you would have people look at?
Yeah. So on the testing side, I think the key things, and I have this on my X posts, you can follow me, but I think the key thing is fasting insulin. They don't normally test that. So you want to tell your doctor. And by the way, you can go to ultralabs.com and just buy a fasting insulin. It's a lot cheaper. So it's it's almost like a 20%, 80% cheaper going onto Ultra Labs and ordering a fasting insulin like for $30 and going through your insurance. So go to Ultra Labs. Fasting insulin I would do. I would do HB1C, which is your 3-month blood glucose. It's a good number to track. I would do HSCRP, which is your inflammation marker. So fasting insulin, HSCRP, HB1C, right? The normal ones that you have, which is HDL trigs, which Gil said, are also, those are key, right? I would do vitamin D. So vitamin D is an important one. Okay, so look, if you're living in the sun and you live in California or you live in Arizona, you're probably getting enough, but get a vitamin D test. I'm living in the East Coast. Some people are really low vitamin D. I just take a simple vitamin D pill anyway, and I'll go through what my key vitamins are, which basic ones are. So vitamin D, do vitamin D. The other one, listen, I think thyroid is and listen, if you look at what happened to me, I think thyroid for me was probably 50% of what happened to me. So I was I had high TSH. I was, I think it's hyperthyroid, where I was, underproducing thyroid. And it's the only kind of, I take a glandular thyroid called Armour thyroid. It's not a synthetic version. It's just like ground up glands. That changed everything for me as well. So there's a lot of women, more women than men sometimes, that are low thyroid. Critical piece. There's this book called Broder Barnes. Person wrote this book on heart disease and thyroid. It is direct correlation onto a lot of things. So I would do TSH and so free T3 TSH, right? Thyroid stimulating hormone, free T3. Do your thyroid, okay? Because thyroid is a critical thing. And then,
and you think Armour thyroid is a really good, I used to be on it, and then I've kind of gotten off all other medical drugs. And so I've been trying.
Armour is just ground up thyroid gland. So I didn't do synthetic. It's just Armour dried off like pig's gland. I get it from Australia. Armour's like, that's it. I take one little pill, and my TSH now is like 0.5. I feel, man, it was a light switch went on. When I did that, my light switch just changed. I mean, I can't tell you what thyroid does to your body. I mean, it is the main like hormone that's driving so many things, right? So get your thyroid checked, not just TSH, but free T3. Anyway, all this will be on Neo. But I would say, MJ, those are the big ones. I do have on X my top 10, and I do have my top 10 foods and top 10 like tests that you should take. But those are the big ones. Vitamins, just so that you know, I used to take a lot of vitamins, and then I was like, when you eat so much meat, there's so much vitamins in eggs and meat. I was like, now you should test once in a while for vitamins, like deficiencies of vitamin D. But for me, my main is, I do vitamin C. I do a lot of the Pauling therapy, which is Linus Pauling. If you follow me on the studying, it's vitamin C. I do 10 grams. So I do literally powder form. I do lysine proline with vitamin C. There's a lot of studies on Linus Pauling, 2-time Nobel Prize winner on heart disease. Amazing stuff that was buried by pharma. I do fish. I do sardines. I eat a lot of sardines. I don't have fish oil. I do a ton of sardines. So do fish oil. Get a really good one. I do a vitamin D pill. So magnesium glycinate, and I will send this to you. It is on one of my top 10 charts there, MJ. Magnesium glycinate is amazing for your heart and for your body. We're just not going to eat enough magnesium. Now, a lot of people say, well, if you were hunting and you were in Africa or whatever, would you need vitamins? Frankly, you were eating the heart, the brain, the liver. You were eating these animals. You were eating all from nose to tail, like the whole animal, right? Now you're getting like a filet mignon, which they were not eating. They were eating the fattiest organs because they were sustained us. So we're not getting all these nutrients, okay? And so I have magnesium glycinate. The other two things that I take, I don't do any aspirin, which, listen, I'm not a doctor, so I'm not giving no one any doctor medical advice here, but I take nattokinase, and I take
I was going to ask you about this.
Yeah, I take natto, and that was from Steven Sinatra. I spoke to him before he died. Amazing cardiologist, amazing guy. I read all his books. He saved me, by the way. When I found my cardiologist and I was all alone at night on forums, I read all his books. And when I spoke to him, he said, look, Mark, he took my call for 30 minutes. He said, look, Mark, you have a high LPA. You take nattokinase, you take lumbrokinase, which is an enzyme in a worm. It's basically a clot buster. And those two I've been taking for the last 4 years. So I don't do aspirin, take no drugs. Those are the big ones. Vitamin C, by the way, is very important. It's collagen building. And if you look at the history with Linus Pauling, he did the research. We don't make our own vitamin C, human beings, just to let you know. We don't. You get scurvy. You go on a boat, for like 6 months with no vitamin C, you're getting scurvy. You're not doing good. Okay. So what are you going to do for vitamin C? Having one orange is not enough. Okay. So, and the way you take vitamin C powder is you take it until, you get loose bowels. Like, so for me, I got to 10 grams and then I was done. So you do it based on that. You go higher until you can't tolerate. And that's your level that you need to absorb. There's a lot of stuff on this. Dr. Levy, brilliant doctor as well, wrote about vitamin C. So that's a key kind of collagen building for your arteries. So if I do that, I cut my insulin, I eat pure food, I sleep. I'm doing 98%. Some of the mental health issues with like worrying, just to let you know, I think it's a big one. I was so stressed on like me having another heart attack. I used to think all the time, like, man, I'm going to die tomorrow. Like, I'm going to, where's my next heart attack, right? And in the book, you can read about it. It's, what happened to me, I got really healthy. So I started feeling really good. That was number one. Number two is I realized I was doing 99.9% more than anyone. And I realized that I'm doing everything I can, right? Two. And the third thing was that I was building collateral. So collaterals are other arteries or other in your heart, the more you exercise. And that they're like natural bypasses of like blockages, right? And there's a lot of science on this, right? I was feeling amazingly on the court. I was like running all day on the court with my son, 16. All of that. And then the last number 5 to get out of mental health or depression was I wanted to give back. The more I spoke about my issues, the more I stopped thinking about myself. And that actually healed me. So anyone who's depressed, who's down, who's got issues, and maybe from the statins causing you, as you start going through these layers, I don't think about this at all. And one thing I do is I appreciate every moment. Like before, I was so busy with my jobs and everything. Every day I'm appreciative. Every single day. Every moment I wake up, I'm like, man, today's my day. I'm so lucky to be here. And I think that perspective in life, with all that other stuff I mentioned, I feel good. I don't worry about stuff, I just want to give back and help people. So that's the mental side of heart disease, because when people have a heart attack, MJ, it's depressing. Yeah. It's like, why me? And I know heart failure or your father and stuff, you start to become like, why me, whatever, right? So first thing is change the food system, hopefully you feel better, positive attitude, give back to other people. Don't think about only your own problems, right? And so those are the kind of the things in the book. There's a lot of that in the book, which was really a battle for me. And, so it's where I am.
Yeah. Well, and I think you're giving yourself the building blocks to have that healthy, mental. I mean, there's so much research around, especially good fats and the good food and the good nutrients, how, I think I've heard a lot about people trying to do vegetarian and they get really depressed and they, and so, give yourself that good food, those good nutrients, that good fat. When I threw stuff into grok, and I like grok because I feel like it's less
I like grok as well.
Influenced by, mainstream money and pharma, but it still is, like you said. So I'm really looking forward to using your tool. But one of the things it did for me was come out with some recipes. And one of them was a chicken liver pate, which it tasted okay, but the consistency was a little funky for me. I'm not used to that. So I was interested about your liver. But the other thing that was a beef bowl. So you just take hamburger. I put it in with some coconut oil and turmeric and ginger and garlic and cook that up and put an egg on top of it. I love that golden runny goodness. And then I mix in some of the leftover yummy oils or fat with a little bit of spinach. And I am satisfied for hours. Like it's hard for me to even eat again. The rest of the day when I eat that.
My goal is to come up with steakhouses. This is like another concept. And a lot of people have these farms in upstate New York, and they farm raise these amazing cows. But to have a steakhouse with cardiologists, surgeons on the wall, my goal is to New York City to have like a steakhouse with all the cardiologists, and saying, enjoy your steak, enjoy your fattiest steak. It's healthy, it's healing food. Just to have people hear that and see that and eat a buttery, fatty steak, because we're so brainwashed in like, man, that's like, I'm going to take a statin right after I finish my steak. It's like, but you're right. So what you're saying is you can make these foods so tasty. I have a lot of spice like sriracha. With these meals, you can put a lot of spice. It's great. Onions, like liver, onions, salt, pepper, all this, whatever. That's really good for you. And the fat is really what satiates you. So put more butter on. I actually have sticks of butter. I mean, this will be gross people out. I get this French butter with salt in it, amazing salted butter. When I'm really hungry sometimes, I just have like I take a bunch of butter, I eat the butter. It's great. I have the salt and the fat. It's a trick.
Yep.
If you want to satiate to get through anything, just have that. Have salt and butter. Helps, it's fine. So that's how you go to,
Yeah, I was going to say, I have this one account that I follow. She's lost a ton of weight. I'm gonna forget her account right now, but she does bacon with a pat of butter in between. That's her
Yeah,
snack. And I'm like,
that's it.
huh, I need to try that.
Yeah, it's
So
tasty. It's salty. Salty. You got bacon, and then it's got the fat.
so
What's strange. And yeah, you go to France and you eat the food there, and it's like, man, it's so tasty. It's fatty, right? We eat such bland food, and we're convinced that bland food is good for us, right? And all the fattiest, tastiest foods, they taste good because they're good for us. Now, I'm not saying that, yeah, sugar does as well, but we weren't in Africa finding beehives every hour and eating honey all day. There was no real sugar around besides some fruit, maybe, right? So the fattiest steak means it's good for you. If it tastes good, it means it's healthy for you in that
yeah,
regard. So
yep.
stick with the food that tastes really good,
And it's interesting to me when I left a stick of butter on exposed on my counter. I usually have a stick of butter somewhere on my counter, but
Yeah.
it's usually covered. But when I left it exposed, my cat got into it and was loving it. So that's also telling me something. I want to talk about salt, but I also want to
Yes.
let's Carrie and Granite. Hey, Carrie.
Yes.
She asked about sourdough bread. So, I
Yeah.
went on this whole sourdough kick last year. What do you think about that? How does that affect people's glycemic index?
It's a tough one. I'm like kind of the radical guy that was on an operating table, and then I know whatever I'm eating, I want to be like, and people say, Mark, you're like 99.9, you don't do nothing. I think it's a lot on moderation. Now, the only thing I say is if you're diabetic and you like got major sugar issues, I would really, like type 2, I'd really cut the carbs, meaning I wouldn't do the breads. Okay. Now, US bread and Europe bread, I go to Europe a lot and my family goes there. And I mean, having the bread there and the wheat there is very different to here in America.
Very
That's the
different.
first thing by far. The dairy is different and the wheat is different. Like the cheese and the dairy in like France and here, different. So
Yep.
that's the first thing. The other thing is that it depends on you, it depends on what issues you have. If it's type 2, you don't want to be eating a ton of carbs. If you want to get rid of type 2, like Verta trial, which they can eliminate type 2 diabetes, which is a major risk, right, for everything, I wouldn't have the sourdough, but not because it's the bread, just because of the carbohydrates. So have a CGM, have some sourdough, see what happens to your CGM. If it goes spiking through the roof, it's probably not good. But just remember, any grain in the US either has some spray glyphosate on it. The grains here do not do well in our gut, right? I mean, my daughter, like in Ohio, she does not touch any more bread anymore. Like, it feels awful. So
Yeah.
the grains here, I just don't know. Yeah, sourdough, if you do it at home and you make your own sourdough, depends on where you are, I don't eat any grains, just to let you know. I don't. I only have some rice. I do rice. So sometimes I do some sushi rice. I don't think white rice is bad for you. I think you get a little bit of white rice. Take a CGM, see what happens to your glucose. But, I just don't do bread. I just don't do bread at all for, especially in this country,
Yeah. Robert
That's not going
Kennedy
to kill
Jr.
you.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
He talked about, because I've been trying to understand this for 20 years and asking my, dad and other family members, do you spray the wheat? And sure enough, they do, right before
Yeah.
they harvest it with glyphosate. So I knew something was off. But then Robert Kennedy Jr. talked about eating, bread and from Italy and the flour from Italy. So then last year I started ordering the flour from Italy to make my sourdough bread. But I think your recommendation about checking your CGM, it depends on you. And if you're spiking, then
Yeah.
you're risking, getting the damage to your arteries. Again, death by a
Yeah.
thousand cuts. So
I mean, go for almond. I know maybe our taste is good, but almond flour. Buy your own almond flour from Whole Foods and make some almond bread. That would be probably a better option. But remember, if you want to be losing weight, remember I told you about the 2 tanks? You want to stop the glucose tank. And I promise you, sourdough is filling that tank, because if you want to work out, you're burning that tank first. You're leaving all the fat on your body. So I like to starve the glucose tank, give it nothing to lose weight. So it depends what your goals are, right? So if you want to lose weight, you want to feel really good, I wouldn't do any breads. I would just go
yeah,
after the fat tank, and it takes 2.5 weeks. Just to let you know, you'll get like cravings, because once you stop sugar and glucose and carbs, you get these cravings for like 2 weeks. Your microbiome changes, things change, but in 2.5 weeks it switches, and you start to lose fast. because all you're doing is burning off fat around you. So if your goal is to lose 30 pounds, I wouldn't do sourdough bread. If your goal is to reverse type 2 diabetes, I wouldn't do sourdough bread, right? If you're super fit, have sourdough bread, So you see how it's kind of like, what do you want to do,
Yep. It's not a cookie cutter, like you said. Yeah, you got to figure out where you're at and what your body does. Let's, and just to reiterate, you talk about sugar and you got to watch sugar, but also, carbs, grains, they turn into sugar in your body. So
yeah, sorry,
just in case you didn't know that.
Yeah, I want to use the word glucose rather than sugar. So, whatever, if it's some rice or, some tortilla or corn, it just turns to glucose in your blood. And that's why I have on X some of these comparisons. Correct. So some will say, I'm not having sugar. I'm not having white teaspoons of sugar. Well, have a banana. That's like probably 6 things of sugar. Same thing, turns to glucose, doesn't matter. That's right. Sourdough turns to glucose. Do you want, So it's kind of like, see those little white teaspoons in that banana? That's what it's turning to in your body. You may think, so 100% correct. Yeah.
So talk about salt, Mark, because this is really interesting, especially like salt will, we have to be really careful with my dad's diet, and salt can make him blow up. But I think it's also been demonized. And you talk about, what's really going on. I think I saw in one of your posts about what insulin does, and it's a sodium retention. So can you explain what's going on there?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's pretty complex stuff. And, to be honest with you, our doctors in the AI, understand this really well. But all I can say about salt is the following. It's one of those demonized, minerals that we need. And when you want salt is when you crave to put a little more salt on your food. Your taste buds are telling you what you need. So I would trust your body. If you think something needs to be salted, salt it, So that's the first thing, to keep it really simple. Anyone who says, well, and by the way, it's so funny. I made an omelet the other day, and I took the salt shake, and the whole thing just fell on the omelet, right? And I'm like, okay, I took some pieces out, and I tried to eat it. It was like the worst. I mean, I couldn't eat it. Like I was like, no way I'm eating it. So that's telling me that I can't have that much salt. Like, it's done. So use your taste buds to determine how much salt you need. That's the first thing, okay? No one's taking a whole bunch of cellar of salt and putting it in their mouth, because that's not going to taste good. The whole kind of insulin connection, it's pretty complex. I don't really want to go into it here. It's actually, by the way, a lot of the posts that I do in the research, Neo is researching this stuff, right? It's finding these root causes. For me to actually explain the mechanisms is actually very difficult. There's some basic mechanisms. That was actually a very interesting one, because I actually never even realized that. So I'm learning also. As I go through this journey with science and root cause, I'm like, wow, it's like, I never knew that. Let me post some of that. So I think it's, it's really difficult right now, because all we hear is from our doctor. We're hearing from what we're reading in a magazine, right? But what is the true root cause? That's why what we're doing with Neo is really groundbreaking. And I think, AI is changing the world. There's no doubt about it. And my kids are involved with it. And I've said, look, just learn it, learn open. I have my own OpenClaw, which is my own AI in my company, and but do use these tools, because it's really going to be groundbreaking on finding things that is not mainstream, that you never knew, right? Because there was no money to be made off cutting salt or moving more salt. So that area of salt, I think, is salt enough that it tastes good, right? And that's key. The whole blood pressure salt thing is also a bogus thing, okay? So a lot of research was done on blood pressure as well with salt. I think get the root causes done, lose the weight, be healthy, and then salt's not a problem, right? So I always get to be like, if you become really healthy and you're super like, by the way, one thing that changed for me when I went on this way of eating is that I had no more food comas, no more like drops of blood sugar, no more tiredness. That was a massive change. I mean, the amount of energy I have today, and the amount of things I can think about just being on more of a ketogenic or fat diet is unbelievably more powerful in my thinking and my feeling and depression you mentioned. So it'll make you feel better. You'll feel less tired. You'll be more creative. You'll be happier, right? You won't have these like sugar doldrums, whatever. So anyway, that's a long story, not about salt, but about, about the root cause of things and fixing some of the root things. A lot of other things heal. they'll just heal, So you got to believe, it's an amazing journey I've been on. Look, I have 3 kids, just to let you know. I have like my son who's 16. He wants to be like his dad, play tennis and go to college and be a pro. He started eating meat and eggs when he saw what happened to my body. I lost 25 pounds. He was like, man, I'm eating meat and eggs. He did his genetic tests. So he's like, I'm going that way. My middle daughter, Rebecca, she's at Madison, University of Wisconsin, studying physiotherapy. She was a sports jock, amazing athlete. And she switched also to the way I'm eating in a lot of ways. Well, she doesn't eat a lot of meat. She has like more like fish and sushi. And by the way, meat is kind of like, for me, just to let you know, I actually do better on like lighter food, like more like sardines and at night. If I have meat, I'll have it in the day. But having it late at night for me is not good. I don't sleep well. So I have meat maybe early in the day. I have more the fish at night or that. But Rebecca's moved all the way to the way I'm eating. She doesn't eat any bread, nothing. My other daughter is tougher. She's in college, full on, with the social scene. It's harder for her, She knows she shouldn't eat it. She's looking at all of us and like, we're healthy. And she's like, so she's trying it. She's trying to, So anyway, that's kind of my own family, what we do. My wife is actually more vegetarian, and she lost a lot of weight, but eating no breads. So you can do vegetarian, but she does have fish and she has eggs. So she's not real, vegan. But she's having no meat because she didn't want to have meat. It's too heavy. She has Lyme disease. So, the common denominator is no processed food, right? Whether you want to go more vegetarian or more meat or more eggs, and just having pure food. So these wars on vegan, carnivore, it's all BS. It's like, there's populations that eat both and that are fine, So
Yeah, I appreciate that. We got another question here about the thyroid, and this kind of, I'm not going to a doctor. It's been quite a few years, Mark. So this kind of hits where I'm at too. So what's your Armor
Armor
Thyroid
thyroid
requires
requires a
prescription?
prescription. Yeah, so I know. Look, I think most GPs, like, I don't know about most GPs. Actually, mine, when I said I want to go to Armor Thyroid, she was fine. There is look, there are places you can order Armor Thyroid in Australia. There's a few they're called they're like pharmacists, or they are pharmacies that are overseas. You can order it. But if you ask me, I have a lot of GPs like Dr. Tro, even our doctors. If you have a problem, just message me, and our doctor will order it for you. So if your doctor is really blocked, our doctors will do it for you. Otherwise, you got to go to international, like there's literally pharmaceutical pharmacies pharmacies actually you can order it from. But our doctors will do it for you. Definitely go Armor Thyroid. It has the natural thyroid hormone. It's really worked well for me for the last 5 years. Amazing.
So when I actually was taking that for a while, and then I took some lysine. So you talked about lysine, and they told me to stop taking it because it interacted with the Armor Thyroid. Is that not what
Really?
your experience has been? Yeah.
I never knew. That's news to me. Who told you that? I'm going to put that into me.
Because they were, my doctor at the time, because all of a sudden then I wasn't being it wasn't as effective what my dosage was.
Really?
And they happen to ask, but anyway, that's a little side note, maybe something to look into.
Yeah, look into,
because I saw that research on the vitamin C and the lysine, and I'm like, that's really interesting. I wonder if,
I've had no problem
what
with
they
it
told
for
me
5
was wrong.
years. Yeah, I've been taking lysine, a ton of it, and the thyroid, and my TSH is fine. So I'm not sure.
Well, I know we're kind of getting up here to your time, Mark.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's other questions, but what are your final thoughts? What would you say to people that are either like me, who have a loved one, or myself, where I'm trying to get healthier? I have never had a heart issues. I've really have not had blood pressure issues, but I probably am a prime candidate if I don't change, what I'm doing and what I've been eating. And so, and my dad, just again, if you don't know, my dad's been in and out of the hospital for 4 months. He just got back out a couple days ago. He, and his heart is not getting better at this point. He's got, I guess I would think a lot of plaque on there. He's got one of the valves that isn't working right. So it's very stiff, which I believe plaque causes it to be very stiff. And, typically people would go on statins or, take a other cholesterol lowering drug. And, now the blood is actually, they call it regurgitation, because the blood is actually going backwards into the heart. And so the heart's having to work harder. It's getting stiffer. And if there's something we can do, I mean, maybe they can do something structurally with the heart, but otherwise they're just going to try to manage it with these drugs. And, it's Lasix. It's because his body fills up with fluid.
Yeah.
And because the heart's not working right, I guess. I don't quite.
Yeah, ejection fraction is probably low. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he'll go for a few weeks and he'll be okay, and he's getting stronger and stuff. And then boom, this happened a week ago, and he filled up with fluid, and then he couldn't breathe, and his oxygen stats went really low, and he had to go back to the hospital. So they changed the statin, or changed the Lasix to help get the fluid off of the body. But that's a Band-Aid. That's not really getting to the root. So I'm hoping that with this understanding and stuff, we can hopefully get to the root, maybe give him some better food so he's not spiking his glucose so much, and can really actually heal his heart. He's 85, but he's not done. He wants to live.
Amazing.
So
MJ, amazing story. So is he walking? Can he exercise? Can he walk? He can.
He can walk with help, but he's very worn out, and his ever since this 4 months when he had this massive staph infection that pretty much darn near took him out. And he had to remove his pacemaker because the staph infection got connected to that pacemaker, and then he had to get that removed and put another one back in. But ever since he got home, his diastolic number, the bottom number on his blood pressure, has been, in the 30s to 50s. And I mean, it's very, very low. Yeah. So, but yeah, he can walk around. He's using a walker mostly, but he can walk around.
Okay. I'm going to give my last point here, and because I got to run, but I think this is what I'm thinking. And, look, I think get a calcium scan. Everyone listening here, get a CAC scan, which is just a score. Get a calcium score. I wish I did it when I was younger, like 50. All it shows you, if you've got some calcium in your heart, means there is some plaque. Basic score, $120. Go to a radiologist, get a calcium scan. That's the first thing. Number two is that I believe in, that your body is from nature. So feed it foods that are just off the planet Earth, as pure as possible. Water. If you want to do coffee, do black coffee, do that. That's the second piece, okay, is the food. The other thing is that have hope. I think that we've had so many people that even in their 80s, MJ, I had an amazing guy in Turkey, and the mother was like on all these drugs at like 84 and terrible, like had all these blood pressure, and they went to the hospital. He went home, he retired, and then he basically fed her off all these amazing foods off the land. And she lived into 97, unbelievably healed. Okay, so the body has the potential to heal. It can heal. Okay, if you feed it the foods, it can heal. So my view is that, sunlight, fresh air, good food, community. And she passed away, by the way, was because it was COVID. So she wouldn't have no social aspect. She was inside, and he said that she just was depressed, Yeah. So I think that's my takeaway for everyone here, is that, nature, don't try to re-engineer the body. It's too complex, okay? Feed it the good stuff. Be hopeful. Do a CAC scan, because that could save your life, because you may see plaque. Then you're going to be really more serious. The statin, for me, not going to save you. I'm not a doctor. Don't go down that path. Go down the other path, which is root cause. And I wish everyone the best. And MJ, this has been really good. So appreciative.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, again, if you're not following Mark on X, that's the best place to find him. Mark Kaplan 20 on X, and then health. What is your website again?
Healthtruth.ai.
Healthtruth.ai.
Healthtruth.ai. Yeah.
There you go.
Wonderful.
And get his book Unplugged as well.
Yeah, Unplugged.
Mark, thank you so much for your time and your story, and thank you for sharing with us today. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. Take care.
Blessings, everybody.
All right. Yeah.